Part 238. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2375. A group of imperial physicians were busy until Shenxi, and it was almost time for dinner. Xiao Yuan was asking the kitchen to prepare food for them. After everyone cleaned their hands, they sat around the table while eating and talking about work. I'll send out 3 tickets, how about you? I am 3 too. Me too. I didn't send any of them. After inspection, I found that they were very strong, but they were all young and in good health. They just ate less meat and eggs before, so some people didn't have enough blood. These are all within the range. Within. Man Bao also said, prepare more meat and eggs, but you don't have to give them too greasy food. 2 eggs a day, and cooking some porridge with chicken is very good for qi and blood. Xiao Yuanzheng glanced at her and said, it's quite a lot for one person and 2 eggs a day. It's still the first month of the year, and it's just the end of the new year. Eggs in the capital are not easy to buy. Originally, chickens didn't like to lay eggs when it was cold, but it was the Chinese New Year, and eggs were even more in short supply. Man Bao felt infinitely regretful. It would be great if it were in our county seat. We have a small zhuangzi, which raises a lot of chickens and ducks, and collects a lot of eggs every day. Alas, listen to my third brother, because the small zhuangzi raises a lot of eggs. The price of eggs in our county has been reduced now, and you can buy 2 for a penny. Xiao Yuanzheng and others. But it doesn't matter, I also raised a lot of chickens in the village in Yangzhou. If I can't buy them, I will go back and ask the purchasing manager to tell my 5th brother that they can bring them back from Yangzhou, but there are not many. While listening to the order, the steward raised his head in shock. Is Imperial Dr. Zhou trying to intervene in purchasing? Xiao Yuanzheng coughed lightly and asked Zhou Man, is there 2 eggs for a penny now? The steward on the side broke out in a cold sweat. Man Bao smiled and said, Lujiang County is like this because of the abundance of eggs. I remember that when I was a child, it was 3 cents for 2. Later, I occasionally heard my second brother say that it was 1 cent for 1. In recent years, many people have raised chickens, so the price should have been reduced again. Uncertain. Man Bao smiled and said, Kuotai and Minan, low prices are a good thing. There was more cold sweat on the forehead of the steward. Xiao Yuan glanced at him, then smiled at Zhou Man and asked, then do you know how much an egg in the capital costs? Man Bao shook his head, I don't buy or sell eggs in Beijing, so of course I don't know, but my brothers definitely know. Man Bao was very enthusiastic about this and asked, Xiao Yuanzheng, are you planning to stock up on more eggs? There are still many people coming to receive vaccinations, or I will find my 5th brother, he is very concerned about this. The most incomprehensible. Xiao Yuanzheng wanted to refuse, he was not interested in these things, and thought that it would be fine to use Man Bao's words to beat the steward, but after seeing the steward's expression with his head lowered, he paused, then nodded, all right, just let your 5th brother come over. The price is right. We want to stock up on some eggs. Man Bao happily complied. Steward. Xiao Yuanzheng took everyone to discuss a few dietary recipes. In fact, people eat whole grains, as long as they ensure enough staple food, green vegetables, and meat and eggs, people can slowly raise their qi and blood. Those who can be left have no major problems. At least their health can be guaranteed. Anyway, they are much stronger than the group of veterans who live not far away. Since they can all pass the level of vaccination, the one they chose crowds should be better. After dinner, the meal list was also fixed. Xiao Yuanzheng handed the list to the steward, just prepare 3 meals a day for them according to the list. After the steward takes it, he should go down. Man Bao said in a timely manner, there are also many chickens and pigs in my village. These are all meats, and we can talk about them. Xiao Yuanzheng laughed out loud, nodded and said with a smile, Okay, let your fifth brother come over to talk, but Imperial Physician Zhou, is the Zhuangzi you bought in Yangzhou so big? Man Bao looked at him inexplicably. I didn't buy it, it's a job farm, hundreds of acres. By the way, I've been promoted again this year, and I should be able to allocate a batch of job farms again in July and August. I don't know if it can still be placed nearby, otherwise it will be difficult to manage if it is scattered. When the other imperial physicians heard the words, they looked at them in unison, and even Imperial Physician Lu couldn't hold back and asked, "The Zhuangzi you are talking about is your work field?" Man Bao nodded, "Yes." "Is your job field in charge of yourself?" Man Bao nodded, "That's right." Seeing their expressions, Man Bao immediately said, "I didn't break the law, it was approved by the Ministry of Household." The salaries of officials in the capital were all received directly from the Ministry of Households, so Xiao Yuan Zheng did not know the truth. Unless the Ministry of Household did not give them salaries one day, the officials would turn to the chief officials of the headquarters. Xiao Yuan Zheng and Imperial Physician Lu had heard about it vaguely, but they only knew about it because they couldn't find Man Bao on duty for a year. "But," Xiao Yuan said quietly, "I thought you bought Zhuangzi near your job field." "This is a good way to occupy the workplace, ahem, no wonder Xiao Yuan thinks so, many officials do this." Man Bao was also an old man in the officialdom. Hearing what Xiao Yuan was saying, he couldn't help but ask, "Am I that kind of person?" "Xiao Yuan Zheng, you're not, but I didn't expect that the Zhuangzi you mentioned was always his job field." Several other imperial physicians couldn't help but inquire, "Imperial Physician Zhou manages the field by himself, does it cost a lot? What is the profit?" "It's quite big. The first year is a loss, the second year can be guaranteed, and the third year can make money." After Manbao came back, Zhou Lizhong showed her the ledger, so Manbao knew more clearly and told them in the first year, she spent all the money for the seeds, as well as the farm tools, chicken and pig seedlings for the tenants. As soon as everyone heard this expenditure, they were immediately moved. "This expenditure is too high. The main reason is that you still have to worry about it. With such a high expenditure, you have to be watched all the time. Otherwise, the tenant farmers will not pay attention, let alone 3 years. I am afraid that they will not be able to make a return in 5 or 6 years. That would be a big loss. And farming depends on the weather. Near Yangzhou and the suburbs of Beijing, there are no other natural disasters except the drought the year before. If this is bad luck, it happens to be dry this year, and what if there is flood next year? So it's better to leave it to the Ministry of Household to take care of it. We can just sit back and enjoy the success, and go to collect the rent every autumn and winter, and that's it. Not bad. Man Bayadao, my village has a lot of output. In addition to chickens and pigs, there are also many fruits and vegetables. If you want, you can buy from my fifth brother. I will ask my fifth brother to give you a cheap one." Imperial Physician Zheng sighed and asked, "I remember that Imperial Physician Zhou had 6 brothers." Man Bao nodded, "Yes, I'm number 8, and there's a sister above me. Everyone is more attentive. There are not so many brothers in their family to help guard the job field. The most important thing is that they have another important reason why they dare not say it, because it is too unlucky. What if they invest this year and they get fired next year? It hurts to think about it, so it is safer to sit and collect the rent. See you at 6 p.m. Make an announcement here. The monthly pass counted by the monthly pass plus the monthly pass includes the total number of votes of all the websites below the reading text, such as Yunkai, Kikai, Xiaoxiang, Hangzhou, etc., and the total number of votes on the billboard, so the monthly pass plus more has always been all websites together. The starting point has recently been engaged in a year-end monthly pass activity. The first stage is a monthly pass of more than 5,000 yuan and a reward of 2,000 yuan, already completed. Moyan asked me, and she urges me to ask for more monthly passes after knowing that I want it. The monthly ticket is 5,005 days. But Plus is a monthly pass that includes all websites. The monthly pass on Yunkai's side is also very important. I am very grateful to everyone for voting for me in the second place. The reward for the second place is 8,000 yuan. Anyway, just wiped a tear, and then decided to work hard to repay the debt. Of course, my determination is like this, but there are many trials and temptations in life, and I don't know what tomorrow will be like. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2376. Xiao Yuanzheng went to see the cattle before leaving, and then said to Zhou Man, "Tai Dr. Lu, the cattle will be handed over to you, and we won't be here until 2 days later." Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu nodded in agreement. When Xiao Yuanzheng and others were sent away, Imperial Physician Lu turned to look at Zhou Man. Man Bao looked at him inexplicably. "What's wrong?" Imperial Physician Lu said indifferently, "Do you know how much an egg the steward purchased cost?" Man Bao thought for a moment and guessed, "San Wen money." "It's twice as expensive as when their eggs in Lujiang County were the most expensive. Shouldn't this price be reliable?" Imperial Physician Lu, "No, at first it was 5 cents a piece, but now it has risen to 6 cents. I heard that eggs in the capital are very difficult to buy now." Man Bao's eyes widened, his spirits lifted. So much money. She tried her best to recall the ledger she had read not long ago. It also included the income from selling eggs. It was already agreed that the villagers raised half of their chickens, including not only chicken but also eggs. It's just that she only remembered the total amount of chickens and eggs sold, not how many eggs and chickens were sold. Imperial Physician Lu glanced at her and snorted with contempt, "Don't think about it, if you sell it, you will definitely not have this price. Didn't you see that the steward was so guilty that he was sweating? Not even money can be sold." Man Bao, "I have been patronizing and recommending their agricultural and sideline products, where should I pay attention to this?" However, Man Bao still wrote a letter and asked Julan to send it to the sentry, and ask someone to send a letter to the family. Even if the price is not so high, it is good to be able to sell it, and it is a fortune to make a fortune. Huangzhuang is not far from the city, and the guards here are the imperial guards. Today Yin or even came to see her in person, so she still has some face. Although the steward of Huangzhuang wanted to stop the letter, the guards still send someone to deliver a letter to the Zhou family. The letter was sent directly to Bai Shan. As he opened the letter, he asked curiously, "Why did you send the letter back after only a day and a half?" Bai Erlang smiled, "Is this missing you?" Bai Shan glanced at him and said, "When do you plan to go back to Chongguan Museum to study?" He said, "I didn't go because I had to prepare for the examinations for the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Personnel. Lu Huan didn't go because he wanted to prepare for the Mingjing examination." "Why didn't you go?" Bai Erlang, "Didn't Yin also go?" "He's not in good health." Bai Erlang snorted, "It's not, it's obviously because you didn't go, he didn't go because he was bored." He said, "I don't want to go either, Yi Ziang is out of office, and Feng Zonping also asks for leave. Zhao Liaolang is the only one I can get along with in the entire Chongguan Museum, but I don't like to play many of the things he likes to play. It's weird." Bai Shan was just trying to shut him up, not really letting him go to school. Seeing that he was talking non-stop, but finally stopped pinching him and Man Bao, he looked at the letter with peace of mind. When he opened the letter, he realized that it wasn't for him. So he picked up the envelope and glanced at it again, and found that no one had accepted it, only Man Bao's signature, and couldn't help laughing. He opened the letter and read it, then folded the letter and said, let's go to Brother Friday. Friday Lang is not at home, in the restaurant." Bai Shan and the others walked all the way, and at the busiest time in the restaurant, there were people waiting to eat inside and out. In and out serving. When Santu and Situ came back from school, they took off their Confucian shirts, put on their homely clothes, and went to the hall to greet guests and serve food. Bai Shan also saw Daji's second son, Bai Shuping. He also ran with a vegetable plate, deftly dodging the constantly walking guests, placed it on a table accurately, and shouted with charm, "Fen steamed pork. One bowl, one grilled fish, can you take a look at it?" Friday Lang settled the bill at the counter and was about to make an order. He was not as fast as Zhou Lijun, but it was similar to an ordinary cashier. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang stayed for a while, then went over to lean on the counter. Wu Wulang calculated a little slowly, and said without raising his head, "Wait a minute, which table are you at?" When he looked up, he saw Bai Shan and Bai Erlang. His eyes slightly brightened. "Why are you here? Come, come, and help me settle a meal, there will be more people checking out and leaving in a while." Bai Shan saw the menus on the table, with the names and prices of the dishes, and the table number on the top, which was very clear. Even if they didn't know much about the dishes in the restaurant, they could calculate it without error. Bai Shan took over and said, "Brother Friday, Man Bao wrote you a letter." Then he handed the letter to him. Wu Zhoulang cannot write many words, but he recognizes a lot of words, which belongs to the long-term stage where he can read and write. He read it word by word, overjoyed. "Eggs in Huangzhuang are so expensive." Bai Shan, fifth brother, you didn't understand Man Bao's meaning. Man Bao said that there was a manager in Huangzhuang who falsely reported prices, so Xiao Yuan Zheng wanted to see you. Wu Wulang calmed down a bit. "Oh, I said, eggs outside are usually 2 cents a piece, and the more expensive ones are 3 cents. How come it's so expensive on Man Bao's letter?" Someone came to check out. Bai Shan found out the menu for their table and handed it to Bai Erlang. After letting him settle the bill, he talked to Wu Wulang behind the counter, "Are there many eggs in Zhuangzi?" Wu Lang thought for a while and said, "I have to ask Liz Hong, but there should be a lot. At the beginning of last year, we added a lot of chicks to them. Years ago, we sold a batch of roosters and hens that didn't lay eggs very well, but I remember. There are also many laying hens left." Bai Shan said, "Then go and see Xiao Yuan Zheng. In addition to eggs, there are also meat, chicken, pork, and vegetables to talk about." He smiled and said, "Now that we have talked about it, let's talk about it in a big way. Later, you will prepare some of everything to send, and let them see the finished product. It will be better to talk about it." Friday Lang asked, "What about the price?" Bai Shan asked him, "What does the fifth brother think?" Friday Lang said, "Give it to them at a lower price than the market price. Now you don't have to worry about selling eggs. They are usually sold for 2 cents a piece. It's not uncommon for large ones to sell for 3 cents. This is indispensable, but other can give them less." Bai Shan nodded. "The fifth brother is used to buying, so he should be more familiar with this than us, so you can make up your own mind." Wu Wulang was a little strange. "Aren't Man Bao and the others in Huangzhuang? I heard that there is a lot of land there, and they are all good ones. Where does the water for the moat come from? Why are there still lack of vegetables and meat and eggs?" Bai Shandao, "That's His Majesty's Zhuangzi. This time it was bought by the Imperial Hospital. The two are separate. Even if the people living there want to eat the vegetables from the Huangzhuang, they have to pass the purchasing and stewardship level first. Yes. Only in this way can the income and expenditure be calculated, otherwise they will be chaotic inside, and the accounts will be chaotic, and it will be bad if they don't match up when the quarterly accounts are settled." See you at 9. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2377. Wu Wulang immediately decided to bring a batch of vegetables and eggs to Xiao Yuanzheng tomorrow. He immediately handed over the counter to Bai Shan and Bai Erlang, and ran to the back kitchen to pick things. Many things in the restaurant were sent from Yangzhou. After all, the products produced by themselves do not require money, which saves a lot of money compared to buying them outside. Among them were eggs and a few chickens, but Saturday Lang told him, the chickens have all been killed, and now they are almost ready to be cooked. By the way, there will be no more chicken dishes outside, but there are still some eggs. You want to come? What are you doing? Friday Lang said, gift. He glanced at the eggs in the basket, and finally went to find a small basket, and replaced the eggs, so that the eggs came out to the point, which was much more generous than the full basket. Xiao Yuanzheng was stunned after receiving a basket of eggs and vegetables early in the morning before he reacted. Then he smiled and assigned a servant to take Wu Wulang to the steward at Huangchuang. Xiao Yuanzheng looked down at the eggs in the basket, took one and asked, how does Master Friday plan to sell this egg? Wu Wulang had discussed it with Bai Shan before he came, and immediately said, 2 cents, no matter how big or small, but for every 1,000 eggs, we will give 10 eggs. He smiled embarrassedly, for a small business, our Zhuangzi has only 800 or 900 eggs in total, and it may be possible to collect 1,000 eggs in 10 days. Therefore, their eggs are not many, and they can be sold out in bulk. Xiao Yuanzheng smiled, but the smile did not reach his eyes. He nodded and said, the price is good. Seeing that there were pumpkins and winter melons in his basket, he simply asked him the price. Friday Lang knew that they had a large quantity, so he simply offered them a price of 100 catties, which was less than the market price. Xiao Yuanzhen's eyes were even colder, but he still had a smile on his face, and asked to take Wu Wulang to Huangchuang, and he would have to go to the palace at Dianmao before going there. The smile on his face fell as soon as he got on the carriage, and the carriage moved. He pursed the corners of his mouth tightly and did not speak, but in the end he couldn't hold back his anger and swept the things on the table onto the carriage. The driver outside was startled, and couldn't help shouting, Master. Xiao Yuanzheng said with a sullen face, it's okay, continue to enter the palace. After entering the imperial hospital, the imperial physicians who met face to face couldn't help but smile, bowed their heads and greeted Xiao Yuanzheng, then stepped aside and waited for him to walk past for a long time before starting to move. Imperial physician Lu was old and felt shallow, earlier than he entered the palace. At this time, he was drinking a cup of hot tea that had just been brewed. When he saw Xiao Yuan was coming in, he put down the cup and saluted, and only picked it up again after the other party waved his hand. The hot tea came to warm his hands, and he followed behind him into the office, laughing and asked, in the early morning, who made the hospital angry? Xiao Yuanzheng snorted coldly, the shopping at Huangzhuang is too much. Imperial physician Lu was surprised, didn't you check the bill? It's not much different from the purchase price in the palace. Xiao Yuanzheng was stunned for a moment and then fell silent. It took a while for Imperial physician Lu to react, it won't be as Zhou Man said, they just deducted some money, shouldn't it be much? Xiao Yuanzheng sneered, it's not much, just double it. Imperial physician Lu stopped talking. Xiao Yuanzheng had luck and said, the partial price is similar to that of buying into the palace. When this matter broke out, it is not one or two who offended. At that time, it will be the people from our Taiyuan hospital who will suffer. Imperial physician Lu took a sip of tea slowly, and was glad that he was not the deputy director of the hospital long ago. Sure enough, being the chief officer is easy to short-lived. He waited for the tea to fall into his stomach and felt a warm feeling rise before asking him, the hospital is planning to. Xiao Yuanzheng then closed his eyes and said, I have no plans, let's just fool around with this matter, otherwise what should I do? Is the imperial hospital involved in the purchase of the palace? I don't want to be an enemy with the entire inner court. However, the imperial physician's office spends a lot of money. The Ministry of Household only pays a part of the money here, and most of it is paid by His Majesty. Your Majesty, you know that if the cost is too high and the money in the internal treasury is broken, it will be pushed to the Ministry of Household, and wanting to get money from the Ministry of Household is like going to the sky, Xiao Yuanzhang said, so we don't have such a large expenditure of capital. I want to leave most of the purchase to Zhou Yu. Dr. Lu, Zhou Man's fifth brother. Xiao Yuan is nodding. I have already asked someone to lead him to Huangchuang. It depends on what the steward over there does. He knows how to advance or retreat, then we will be hello and me, everyone, otherwise. Xiao Yuan is sneering, our hospital is not so easy to bully. Imperial physician Lu took another sip of tea and said after a long while, I was on duty last night, and your Majesty didn't call anyone, but I heard back that your Majesty is much better. Xiao Yuanzhang took a few deep breaths, squeezed a warm smile on his face, and said gently, I see, today is a small court meeting, His Majesty should be over soon, I'll ask for his pulse. Xiao Yuanzhang got up with a genial face, and took the medical assistant to consult the emperor. At this time, Wu Lang had a conversation with the purchasing manager at Huangchuang. Wu Lang was reminded by Bai Shan yesterday, and he was ready to be embarrassed today. After all, the eggs he bought were 5 cents, or even 6 cents. For one money, it is considered that he has cut off other people's financial paths. However, if he continues to make money from others, he will have no money, so he can only cut off other people's money, not to mention this is a not very right way of money. But what Wu Wulang expected was that the other party was kind to him, but after seeing the eggs, he didn't ask him the price, but directly set the price, I think your eggs are average, so I can only give you 5 cents. 1. What do you think? The smile on Wu Lang's face stopped, and he doubted his ears, it's 1 5 cents, not 3 5 cents. The steward took a deep look at him and smiled kindly, of course not, you can see that we have even drawn up the deed, you can take a look. Friday Lang took it and saw that the other party and him were buying eggs in detail. He would provide them with 300 eggs every day, 5 cents per egg. Wu Wulang was silent for a while, and then a smile appeared on his face, I know the kindness of the steward, and to show my sincerity, I am willing to lower the price a little bit, and sell one to the hospital for 2 cents. The steward had a faint smile on his face, and said with a half smile, Friday Lord is very generous, but we are a yamen, and we can't let the people suffer, just 5 cents apiece, and the deed has been drawn up, and I will write another copy. It's also troublesome, you can sign this one. He glanced at the vegetables in his other basket, smiled and said, it's easy to say that these vegetables are all, we want them all, and send 100 caddies a day, and pumpkins, how about 100 caddies for your $200? All of these can be contracted. The next chapter will be around 11 o'clock in the evening, woo, said Good Day. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2378. On Friday, Lang's eyebrows jumped, and the price he paid Xiao Yuanzheng was 100 jin and 90 wen, which more than doubled when he arrived at the steward's place. How can you do this in business? Buyers rushing to add money to sellers. Friday Lang was not a master who would cheat people, so he was a little flustered at the moment, and when he thought about Man Bao working under Xiao Yuan's hands, he lowered the price with his front feet, and if his back feet raised the price and sold it to the Thai hospital, then what is Xiao Yuan going to think about Man Bao? So Wu Wulang, who felt inappropriate at first, shook his head. Seeing that the steward's face was worried, he simply picked up 2 vegetable baskets and said, I won't sell it. Turn around and leave. The steward was stunned for a moment and then cursed inwardly, slippery stinky thing, do you want to eat all of our orders? Steward, do you want to stop people? The steward wanted to lose his temper very much, but he was always the only one who begged to sell him something. This was the first time he rushed to find someone to buy something. This feeling is suffocating. But thinking that the people were brought over by the servants of Xiao Yuanzhen's family, and Zhou Man said that yesterday, Xiao Yuanzhen must have doubts in his heart, and if he squeezes out the people he recommended, Xiao Yuanzhen may not think so. Although the Thai hospital's expenditure on Huangzhuang's side is divided by the Ministry of Household and the Emperor, the money is not directly in his hands, but on the Thai hospital's account. Only when Xiao Yuanzheng signs and agrees can he take the list to the Thai hospital to receive the money. So Xiao Yuan is very important. The steward gritted his teeth, but still squeezed out a smile and went to chase Wu Lang. He caught up with him in Zhuangzi, and he directly pulled him to talk on the road. Master Wu, if you are not satisfied with the price, we can talk about it again. The business that Wu Lang also gave up is so yellow. The main reason is that if they are willing to place an order, many people in the village will have a place for their vegetables, eggs and even pigs, so there is no need for them to sell them to vendors or retailers. Sold. So he also stopped and asked the price directly. Okay, the price can be negotiated, then an egg is 2 cents a piece, a pumpkin is 90 cents and 100 kilograms, and the winter melon will be cheaper for you, 85 cents a piece. 100 pounds. The steward, we can't take advantage of Lord Friday. This egg is only 5 cents, otherwise 6 cents is fine. Pumpkin is 200 cents and 100 caddies, and winter melon is 190 cents and 100 caddies. The people who followed the steward watched the two bargain, but the bargaining was reversed from that of ordinary people. The buyer kept raising the price, and the seller kept lowering the price. This made them a little vague, almost thinking that Friday Lang was the buyer. In the end, Wu Wulang found that he couldn't make any sense with him, so he simply wanted to leave with a vegetable basket. The steward grabbed him, his expression distorted, and then he forced a smile and said, Master Wu, this person, what's wrong with him? You can, but you can't live with money, right? In this way, we all take a step back. How about the eggs for 4 cents? Wu Wulang gave him a deep look and said, Master Steward, although we sell chicken, duck, and vegetables, we also know morality. The market price is so much, we can give you a little less at most. If you are not satisfied, I can sell it to you at the market price at most, 2.5 cents for an egg, but you can't give me such a high price. I'm taking a loss and I won't be able to sleep at night. The more Wu Wulang thought about it, the more reasonable it became, and he said to him, this egg is half of that of the tenant farmers, which means I only have 500 out of 1,000 eggs. I can't eat or sleep because of this money. How unthinkable is it? The steward held back his anger, but cursed in his heart, what are you doing here? How good is it to not do this business at all? I have all found Xiao Yuanzhen, and now I tell him that the price is high. How about playing with him? The steward also explained this time, I don't know Friday, but I signed a contract like this with others. If you have a low price here, it will surely offend other suppliers, which is not good. Friday Lang secretly said, who are you kidding? He has bought it for his own restaurant for several years, so he naturally knows all the twists and turns. I am afraid that the price that those suppliers sold him would not be too high, and most of the extra money went into their own pockets. It's just that this person is too greedy. He has also been in contact with many restaurants. They are still familiar with each other, and they will get some benefits. Less is to receive vegetables and meat from vegetable farmers and butchers, and more is to take some money, but it is not too much. The shopkeeper and the owner of the store know the price of vegetables and meat and eggs. This is the first time I've seen someone like a steward whose price has more than doubled. If it wasn't for Man Bao working in this Huangchuang, and staying here for a while, if it wasn't easy to offend the steward, he would have wanted to pierce these things before leaving. But thinking that Man Bao was inside, he could only hold back his anger, neither wanting to talk to the steward to death, nor to offend Xiao Yuan Zheng with this ridiculous thing. He struggled with the steward for a long time, and finally came up with a solution for him, and he said to the steward, "Just let me go." When Xiao Yuan asked about it, I would say that Zhuangzi was hit by frost and the vegetables were beaten. It was broken, the hens were frightened, many of them stopped laying eggs, and now the rest can't be supplied to Huangchuang, so this business is forfeited. As soon as the steward heard this, his hand loosened, and he hesitated, but imperial physician Zhou. I told her, Wu Wulang immediately said, she is an imperial doctor and doesn't care about the family at all. How can she know the situation in Zhuangzi? Naturally, what we say is what we say, so I told her that Zhuangzili even has its own restaurant. I can't supply what I need, let alone take out, what do you think? The steward rolled his eyes and saw that Wu Zhou was really unwilling to join forces with him. It was cooperation. He looked up at the big sun above his head, only to realize that they had been entangled for almost 2 hours, and he would continue to entangle. It doesn't make much sense either. So the steward took out a purse and stuffed it into Lang Wu, then this will be troublesome for Lord Friday. Wu Lang didn't want it, so he pushed it back, and the steward tucked it into his hands tightly, and said if he had something to say, Lord Friday, this is a little bit of our intentions, it's not good for you to run away in vain, Xiao Yuan Zheng still needs you to explain it in person, so this right should be the Tifi, if you refuse, we won't be able to open your mouth and let you go. Wu Lang saw that he was ready to fight for another 2 hours, and immediately took the money bag with a jolt. Although the sun in the first month is not sunny, it is still warm, but after a long time, his head is dizzy, and his stomach is hungry. Seeing that Zhou Wulang had received the money, the steward laughed, and then personally sent the person to Zhuangzi. The servants of the Xiao family just sent him to Huangzhuang to introduce him to the steward and left. At this time, there was only Wu Lang's mule cart outside Zhuangzi. He put the vegetables and eggs on the cart and drove the mule cart back by himself. In hindsight, this kid is not even willing to give him a basket of eggs. Will he be able to fulfill the agreement when he goes back? Friday Lang, guess. See you next year. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2379. Man Bao was wearing a mask and was standing beside the cow. He took out the pox scab carefully and quickly with a clip and put it into the jar. She had already taken a lot this morning. Seeing Julan appearing not far from the cowshed, Man Bao nodded to her, then put down the clip to cover the jar. She turned her neck and said to the Dr. Lu on the other side, Dr. Lu, you should eat its lunch. Man Bao took the jar into the house, put the jar on the shelf, and washed his hands before taking off the mask. Imperial physician Lu moved in slowly. He stood all morning, his calf and soles of feet felt numb. He put the jar on Zhou Man's side before going to wash his hands and take off his mask. After taking off and breathing fresh air, he realized that he had to live with smallpox, so there is no need to wear it at all. But he had already warned them, so he didn't say anything. Man Bao really wanted to talk to Imperial Dr. Lu, but Imperial Dr. Lu was very tired after a busy morning. He didn't want to talk when he was tired, so he ignored her. Man Bao could only hold back his words and go back to the yard. Julan and the others had already prepared hot water for her in the bathroom. Man Bao changed all the outer layers of clothes, shoes, and socks, and freshened up again, before going to the next yard to have dinner with Imperial Dr. Lu. Man Bao asked Imperial Physician Lu, when do you want to check their health? Imperial Physician Lu said, I'll go after my meal and rest for a while, and I have to continue to pick up acne scabs in the afternoon. That's right, the main task of Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu for the past 2 days is to take out the healed pox scabs on the cows for use. The side task is to monitor the physical condition of the experimenters to ensure that their bodies are okay before the vaccination. Because the removal of the pox scab was in direct contact with the smallpox virus, after negotiation, the Thai hospital did not let the medical assistants do it by themselves. Instead, the Dr. Liu, who had been out of smallpox, and Joe Man, who had rich experience, were in charge together. Without medical assistance, 2 people had to take out the pox scabs on the 5 cows. In the morning, they only took out most of the cows. In the afternoon, they worked until the sun went down. At most 1.5, and 2 people made 3. Hey, so it can be done in 2 days. After doing this, Imperial Physician Lu relaxed a lot, and the speed of eating was slowed down. Man Bao ate quickly, but she said to Imperial Physician Lu, I did a careful comparison when I left just now, and found that the number 3 cow had a lot of pox scabs, which were densely packed. Was it the one who was dying of illness before? During that time, he and Zheng Tai were on duty, so he nodded. Man Bao said, I roughly estimated that the pox scab on number 3 cow is more than double that of number 1. I don't know if it can be removed in a day. Number 1 is the cow that Joe Man is holding now. Imperial Physician Lu couldn't take it anymore. First, he thought that there was still such a large workload waiting for him. Second, he thought of the pimple scabs that he had clipped out. Although as an imperial physician, he has seen dirty and disgusting things, but I have been facing these acne scabs all morning, and forget it when I can't remember it. When I remember it, it really affects my appetite. Man Bao ate very deliciously, and there was still a lot to eat. Imperial Dr. Lu watched her finish a bowl of rice, and then filled another bowl full of rice, and couldn't help but said, Imperial Dr. Zhou, although it is better for women to be plump, it is not acceptable. Obese, your appetite. Man Bao said calmly, I'm still growing. She said, I've done the math. I can eat open for 2 or 3 years, and I'm not full now. As a doctor, of course she knows that people can't eat too much, but the key is that she is not full now. Imperial Physician Lu looked at her quietly, and lowered his eyes for a while to eat. Life in Zhuangzi was a bit boring, mainly because Imperial Dr. Lu didn't want to talk to Joe Man, and Man Bao couldn't find anything to talk to Imperial Dr. Lu. The two had nothing to say except talking about business. So full of food and drink, Man Bao yawned and went back to his yard, walking in the yard to digest his food while thinking about vaccination. After she finished thinking about it, she turned around and found that 2/4 of an hour had passed, so she simply went into the room to rest. Cake made her bed. Man Bao lay on the bed and asked Julan, who was busy beside him, is anyone here to deliver the letter today? Julan smiled and said, no, ma'am, we have only been here for a day, and the time is still short. Man Bao yawned and her tears were about to come out. She half closed her eyes and said, I don't know if the 5th brother has come to Huangchuang, and we can't get out either. We have no way of knowing the news outside. Man Bao slowly fell asleep, feeling that he was pushed to wake up by Julan after squinting for a while. Ma'am, it's almost time, Imperial Physician Lu is already preparing. Man Bao was confused for a while before asking, how long have I slept? 3/4 of an hour. That should really be ready. Man Bao got up and sighed, whenever I go to bed, I feel that time flies so fast. Julan and Zibing couldn't help but be happy. Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu packed up and went to see those experimenters. They didn't need to check the pulse of each one. They walked over to each room one by one, looked at their faces, and asked if they were uncomfortable. It was faster than yesterday. The two of them walked around in the past, and in the end, there was naturally no one who was uncomfortable, but the two of them were much more awake. When you return to the bullpen, you can quickly get back to work. Man Bao thought it was quite interesting to clip it, but he felt that after clipping one, he would definitely want to clip another. Imperial Dr. Lu occasionally looked up and saw that she was working hard, much faster than him. He was speechless for a while, and he had to admit in his heart that although she had a lot of problems, she was fine at work. Imperial Physician Lu retracted his gaze, moved his old waist, and turned his neck again, feeling that the pain and soreness eased a little before lowering his head and continuing. They were still in the bullpen until Xiao Yuan came to see them from the lower Ya in the palace. Xiao Yuanzheng also changed his clothes and wore a mask. He strolled over and took a look. He saw the cow fluttering his tail, but he was still honest. The two seemed to have caught a lot, so he asked, "How is it today?" Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu, who were engrossed in it, were startled. They turned their heads and saw that it was Xiao Yuanzheng, who breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Why are you walking without a sound?" Xiao Yuanzheng glanced at them, raised his chin and motioned for them to answer. Imperial Physician Lu said, "I'm afraid I won't be able to take it tomorrow, so I'll add another half day the day after tomorrow." Xiao Yuan is nodding. "The day after tomorrow, afternoon, I will bring someone over to take a look. If it is suitable, we will prepare the pox vaccine the day after tomorrow, and we will prepare it as soon as possible, and we will vaccinate it as soon as possible. This Wang Zhuang will spend an extra day of money every day of operation." Originally, Xiao Yuanzheng didn't think there was a problem with this cost, but after knowing the difference between the cost of buying in Huangzhuang and the market price, he always had a feeling that the hospital was about to run out of money. Man Bao and Imperial Physician Lu put their hands away, put the jars away, and then went to change their clothes. Only then did they sit and talk with Xiao Yuan. See you at 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2380. Xiao Yuanzheng looked at Man Bao after talking to them about the work, and said with a smile, "I have seen the eggs and vegetables of your Zhuangzi, and the prices and items are good." Man Bao got up and asked, "Then do we want to buy it here?" Xiao Yuanzheng nodded with a smile, "It's a pity that your family's output is not very large. I have asked your fifth brother to contact the stewards here. The specific matters will be discussed by them, but the price is suitable. I think Wang Zhuang is here. We will buy as many as we can." Man Bao became happy, and said to Dr. Lu, "Dr. Lu, we will be able to eat what my village produces in a short time." Imperial Physician Lu glanced at her and said, "Is there any difference between the eggs and vegetables produced by your Zhuangzi and those produced by others?" Man Bao, "Is it more delicious psychologically?" Imperial Physician Lu ignored her. Man Bao became elated, and Dr. Lu couldn't help reminding her, "Dr. Zhou, be careful if someone says you are favoritism." Man Bao said, "No, I have never contacted the steward of Huangzhuang. He should not give high prices. This kind of batch of things will lower the price slightly, as long as our things are not bad. Even if someone says, it can't be the truth. What are you afraid of?" Xiao Yuanzheng also smiled and said, "Yes, it's hard not to be jealous of Zhou Tai's character and talent. You don't have to be too concerned about the rumors, it's fine if it's not the truth." At this time, the two of them spoke very easily. Xiao Yuanzheng felt that as long as the other party was smart, he would know to step aside and change the following accounts. He could turn a blind eye and pretend he didn't know. As a result, he left from Zhou Man and Imperial Physician Lu, and when he was going home, Xiao Yuan was about to ask about the purchase, and when he went to the other side of Huangzhuang to see the steward, he realized that the business with the Zhou family had not been completed. Xiao Yuanzheng, who has already boasted about Haikao in Zhou Man. He couldn't help but ask the steward, "Why didn't it work?" The steward lowered his eyebrows and said, "Zhuangzi of the Zhou family has produced too few things, and only when we contacted each other did we realize that there was not much that Mr. Friday could take out, And he also said that the area in Yangzhou has been cold recently, there is dew in the frost, and a lot of vegetables are damaged. Even the chickens we raise are cold and reduce the number of eggs. We can't get it for a few weeks, so. Xiao Yuanzheng lowered his eyes and pondered for a moment. If that's the case, then just buy less. We will take as much as they can. The manager looked embarrassed, but it's a bit troublesome to count things and settle accounts like this. If there are not enough people in charge, I can send a few people over to help. Xiao Yuanzhen's face was a little heavy, and everyone could tell that he was angry. The steward was slightly stunned, but thinking of the consequences of retreating, he still gritted his teeth and insisted, "Sir, I originally planned to do the same, but Lord Friday said that their restaurant needs a lot of things every day. This disaster, it is difficult to supply our own, let alone supply our side." Xiao Yuanzheng sneered, "Do you mean that imperial physician Zhou and the Zhou family deliberately went around this circle to fool me? They came to me when they had no goods on hand." The steward lowered his head and said nothing, but he didn't step back. Xiao Yuanzheng got up and looked at him condescendingly and said, "I can't control you to fool this and that on weekdays, but not in the Thai hospital." He said, "The imperial physician's office does not have income like other departments. The expenditure depends entirely on the Ministry of Household and His Majesty's private treasury. Life has always been tight. You are breaking the path of my imperial physician's office by doing this. The back road for the imperial physician's office is to cut off the front of the imperial hospital." The steward was startled, and quickly knelt down and said, "Sir, the little ones don't dare to fool the Taiyuan hospital. What I said today is true." Xiao Yuanzheng snorted coldly, and threw his sleeves away. After he got into the car, he calmed down, "Turn around and go to the palace. Tonight, Imperial Physician Zheng is on duty in Taiyuan Hospital. Imperial Physician Lu is still compiling medical books, so he did not leave the palace." Seeing that Xiao Yuan was leaving and returning, he asked curiously, "Why did you come back?" Xiao Yuanzheng said angrily about the handling of the steward Huang Chuang, saying, "I came to the palace to ask who is behind the steward. It's not difficult to ask." At that time, the emperor directly handed these matters to the Minister of Internal Affairs, because they were in charge of Huang Chuang. They wanted to build a house in Huang Chuang, and they had to find a house in Yeding Palace and other places. Both slaves and slaves come to the test, and they all need to go through internal inspection. Xiao Yuan was thinking about it for a while, and called a medical assistant who was more diligent in walking around with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and asked him to go to the Ministry of Internal Affairs to inquire now. Imperial Physician Lu asked with a smile, "What if you just found out? Can't you sue your Majesty for such a trivial matter?" Xiao Yuanzheng sneered. Of course, he would not complain to the emperor directly. Wouldn't that put the entire imperial hospital across from the Ministry of Internal Affairs? He always didn't want to make things bigger because he didn't want to take the hospital to confront these people in the palace head-on. After all, unlike the other 3 provinces and 6 departments, they work in the imperial city, but their hospital is in the palace city, and every movement is under the management of the inner minister. If nothing else, their imperial physicians are going to the harem to see a doctor, and every door they pass through, the lock on the door, and the palace guards who guard the door are disciplined by the inner minister. Therefore, if the imperial hospital and the Minister of Internal Affairs are right, unless they are highly valued and liked by His Majesty, others may be embarrassed. There are only Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Man in the entire Thai hospital. Zhou Man may be okay, but Xiao Yuan is not. He is the chief officer of the Taiyuan hospital. Even if it is only a medical assistant who suffers, that is his problem. Therefore, Xiao Yuanzheng cannot be alone. The medical assistant finally came back when it was almost dark, and said to Xiao Yuan, "The people over there in Huangzhuang are all arranged by Lord Xianchun." Xiao Yuanzheng frowned slightly. "Isn't Tong Nei in charge of the inner servants department? Why is AncientChina arranging people? The servant boy is ill. Many years ago, Mr. AncientChina arranged these things. Originally, he was in charge of purchasing and other things, and had close contact with the inner servant. I heard that he was going to take over the servant boy. Xiao Yuanzheng, he wants to cleanse himself. The medical assistant was stunned for a moment and then said, no, he only takes over a part of the affairs. The arrangement of servants in the harem is naturally still in charge of Tong Niawai's son, Xiao Tong Niawai. He paused and said, I heard that Lord Luo also managed the harem for a while before he officially took over His Majesty's internal library. Xiao Yuanzheng, Master Luo is the head of the bodyguard. What does it have to do with the Ministry of Internal Affairs? Forget it, it's enough to know who it is. Xiao Yuanzheng looked at the time, got up and said, I will go home from the palace first, and I will come back in tomorrow. You are not allowed to tell others about this. Imperial physician Lu and the medical assistant both responded earnestly. Xiao Yuanzheng left the palace with his hands behind his back and went home. At this time, Bai Shan also wrote the letter to Man Bao, pressed it on the desk and asked Bai Erlang, I'm going to give Man Bao some food tomorrow. Do you have anything to give her? Bai Erlang shook his head directly, no. After thinking about it, I thought it was too ruthless, so I said, greet her hello for me. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2381. Naturally, Bai Shan couldn't go in, but he didn't leave after handing over the things to the Imperial Guard. Instead, he took out a book and sat in the carriage to read it. Man Bao just strolled around the Huangchuang, and before she had time to go to the cowshed, she received the letter. She opened it, looked at it, blinked, turned around and entered the room, and immediately took out the pen and ink to reply to Bai Shan. After she finished writing, she handed it over to Zibing, let the Imperial Guard help pass it on to Bai Shan. Zibing went out with the letter, and came back with another letter in less than a quarter of an hour. When the Imperial Guard received Zhou Man's letter again, he stood for a while before saying to Zibing, Miss, is Master Zhou busy at the moment? Zibing said, although I'm busy, I still have time to read the letter. The guard was silent, and when he looked at Baba, he couldn't bear it, so he took the letter and sent it out. Another guard standing beside him immediately stepped forward to talk to Zibing, Miss Zibing, have you eaten breakfast? I have sugar here for you. Zibing smiled and said, thank you, big brother Imperial Guard. She took the candy, and when she came to deliver the letter, she brought some snacks to share with the two of them. Two guards. They received the letter silently, then smiled and accepted the dessert of the cake, turned around and assigned a person to deliver the letter to Bai Shan. In the end, Imperial Dr. Lu couldn't see it, and he said to Zhou Man, Dr. Zhou, if you don't go to the cowshed, we will be busy tomorrow morning. Man Bao could only say to Zibing, okay, this is the last letter, tell Bai Shan, there is no need to reply today. Imperial physician Lu frowned, you don't have to go back tomorrow, everyone is busy. Man Bao assured, I will definitely finish the work on time. The big deal, do more today and less tomorrow. Imperial physician Lu stopped talking, Zhou Man was really fast. After Xiao Yuanzheng arrived in the afternoon, Man Bao walked over and asked, Xiao Yuanzheng, are you all right? When Xiao Yuanzheng came in, he heard the guards talk about building a bridge of magpies for Zhou Man and Bai Shan in the morning. Hearing this, he glanced at her and said, do you know what happened outside? Man Bao nodded. Imperial Dr. Lu, who was resting beside him, raised his head and asked, what happened outside? Xiao Yuanzheng said, it's not a big deal, it's almost settled. Man Bao, who had already planned to give up this business, was stunned when he heard the words, and then asked excitedly, Xiao Yuanzheng, did you clean up all of them? No, Xiao Yuanzheng didn't elaborate, but said, Will Bai Shan come back tomorrow? It's alright if he comes, you ask him to tell your fifth brother, and let him come back to Huangzhuang the day after tomorrow, and he will have someone with him. Discuss the purchase in detail. Seeing Zhou Man's hesitation, Xiao Yuanzhang stared at her. Dr. Zhou, I have paved the way forward, you won't tell me this business is not going to be done at this time, will you? Man Bao smiled when he heard the words, of course not, you have done all this, and I will be too ignorant if I refuse. Xiao Yuanzhen nodded in satisfaction. After all, the Zhou family has a low foundation. If she is afraid of not taking his hand, he can't do anything about it, but he will not look good on his face. At this time and a half, I don't know where to find a suitable purchaser. Xiao Yuanzhen was very satisfied with Zhou Man's courage, so he thought about it and said, I heard that your fifth brother has been doing shopping. Man Baofa was very heartfelt, nodded and said, yes, we have a restaurant in our house. The chicken, duck, fish, rice, noodles, and vegetables that are used in it are all bought by him. Xiao Yuanzhen nodded and said, let him come to Huangzhuang the day after tomorrow. Imperial physician Lu watched as the two of them negotiated a private transaction in front of him. That's right, from Imperial Dr. Lu's point of view, Xiao Yuan is entrusting such a big purchase to Wu Wulang, not because Wu Wulang is more capable, but because Zhou Man. Isn't this a personal affair? After Xiao Yuanzheng and Zhou Man finished talking about business, he turned his head and cared about the private affairs of his subordinates. It's been 2 days since you came in, are you used to it? He asked again, would you like to send a letter to your family, and let the family prepare to deliver anything you need? Of course, this was said to Imperial physician Lu, so Zhou Man didn't need it. Judging from what happened today, he was probably thinking about how to keep her relatives and friends from coming to Huangzhuang. Imperial Dr. Lu couldn't get over it, so he put the matter behind him and answered Xiao Yuanzheng seriously, everything here is complete, there is nothing to prepare at home, and there are so many people serving, more than before in Xiaohu. But it's so much better, there's nothing unaccustomed to. Man Bao, who was beside him, immediately stretched out his hand and said, I have it, I only brought some notes when I came in, but I forgot to bring in the medical manuscript papers and books I was compiling. Sometimes it's so boring when it's empty. I want to bring in the manuscript paper and medical books to continue compiling. Man Bao, the name compiled from the 4th grade, is not for nothing, no matter where she is, she has never given up compiling medical books, it is just the difference between writing more and less. Xiao Yuanzheng, didn't Bai Xianzi come today? Didn't you send letters back and forth several times? I forgot to write it in the morning. Send someone to send me a letter back and ask Bai Shan to bring it to me when he comes tomorrow. Imperial physician Lu, you will take home the medical books and manuscripts you have compiled. Man Bao paused for a while and said, yes, His Royal Highness agreed to this matter. If you don't believe me, go ask the prince. Imperial physician Lu choked, of course he couldn't ask the prince. Forget it, she was compiled by Chongquen Museum, in other words, she was the emperor's person when she was an imperial physician, but she was a prince when she was compiled by Chongquen Museum. Regardless of whether it is the emperor or the prince, they obviously like her more than him, and it is boring to argue with her about these details. Seeing that imperial physician Lu didn't say anything, Man Bao thought he had convinced the other party, so he turned his head and stared at Xiao Yuan intently as he was about to reply. What can Xiao Yuanzheng do? He could only agree. Xiao Yuanzheng handed the letter to the servant and asked the servant to take the letter to Bai Shan. Bai Shan is not in Zhou's house, but in Liu's house, but they thought that your letter came from Huangzhuang, so after the family received the letter, they were afraid that there was something wrong with Manbao, so they immediately sent someone to deliver the letter. Lu House. Bai Shan was studying with Lu Huan at Liu's house. During this time, he collected some questions from the Mingjing examinations over the years for him. After returning home in the morning, he packed up and came over with Bai Erlang to find Lu Huan. The Lu mansion welcomed Bai Shan's arrival, especially Mrs. Lu, who directly asked people to prepare a lot of delicious food for them, and also asked people to go to the next door to invite Yin or come together. Facing Bai Shan, she smiled and said softly, "If you want to study, I won't bother you. Huaner is a dull boy. I would like to ask your friends to give him more help." Bai Shan quickly said that he did not dare. As soon as Lu Huan waited for his grandmother to leave, he hugged the two of them and cried, "You don't know what time I have been here. It's been nearly half a month. I open my eyes every morning to read, and close my eyes every morning. I read before I open my eyes, so look at my left hand. Too sleepy, see you tomorrow." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2382. Lu Huan raised his hand. He glanced at himself first, and felt that it was not right, so he rubbed his palm on the clothes hard, and after rubbing it red, he stretched it out to Bai Shan and Bai Erlang to see, crying, "Look, this is all from my grandfather. If I hadn't had to write with my right hand, he would have even typed my right hand." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang looked at the palm seriously. It took a long time to find 2 or 3 light red marks on the palm. Bai Shan couldn't help but nodded, "Yes, Lu Shangshu is too cruel. If we come a little later, this trace may not be visible." Bai Erlang raised his head and laughed loudly, too happy. Lu Huan couldn't help shouting, "Hey, are we still brothers who live and die together?" Naturally yes, so Bai Shan guided his homework wholeheartedly. He tested some of his content, and asked about his study progress in the past few days, then nodded, "The gentleman that Lu Shangshu invited for you is quite good." Although Lu Shangshu said that his grandson was locked up to study, he did not let him study alone, but hired a husband for him. But yesterday, Bai Shan sent a message to Liu's house, explaining that he would visit the house today, so Liu's house gave Mr. a day off and let him go back to rest. However, Lu Shangshu didn't think about what Bai Shan and the others could teach Lu Huan, but he felt that he had been studying behind closed doors for a while, and he had reached the maximum psychological limit. So today, it was said to be a holiday for Mr. Bai and others to give Lu Huan some pointers. In fact, it was a holiday for Lu Huan, to let him relax for a while, to adjust his mood, and then he could study better. However, except for Mrs. Lu, Bai Shan and the others couldn't comprehend it, so Bai Shan took out a stack of thick manuscript paper to Lu Huan. "Well, this is what I collected for you during this period of time. The share is a question that I discussed with my husband." Betting on the question, Lu Huan exclaimed, then covered his mouth, looked left and right, and whispered, "Didn't Kong Jiju say that we must study hard, and we are not allowed to bet the question?" Bai Shan nodded, "That's right, but aren't you solid enough in your studies?" Bai Erlang was also happy, bumped his shoulder and said, "Are you stupid? You really follow Kong's sacrifice? How many people in this world can take the Mingjing exam? Anyone who refers but doesn't succeed is a if they're not solid. Can't they all take the exam?" Lu Huan said in a low voice, "Exams and exams are two different things." Bai Shan didn't say anything. Bai Erlang said, "It's obviously the same thing. What are you taking the exam for? Isn't it just to gain fame and fortune? What is the purpose of betting on the question? Anything wrong?" Bai Shandao, "But what Kong Jiju said is also reasonable. If you want to be an official, you must at least have solid homework. These papers are still." Lu Huan grabbed it, "Give it to me." He twisted and said, "You all took the trouble to write it out, so I didn't have to waste your efforts." Bai Shan and Bai Erlang laughed. When Yin Or arrived, all he saw was that the two of them were looking at Lu Huan with a smirk. He couldn't help reaching out and knocking on the door next to him. After all three of them found him, he walked in and asked curiously, "What are you doing?" Bai Shan opened his eyes and said, "Nonsense, we are teaching him the truth of life and the important knowledge needed to understand the scriptures." So when the servants of the Bai family sent the letter from Huang Chuang, the four of them were really serious about studying in the study. Of course, it was Bai Shan and Yin or Lu Huan who took the test and taught him when he couldn't answer. That's right, it's the direct question and answer mode. The exam is about 10 days away. Lu Huan has already studied the books used in the Mingjing exam, but he can't remember some, and some can't comprehend it. Therefore, Bai Shan and Yin asked questions directly. I don't know whether it was because they asked their friends or because the questions they asked were not difficult. Lu Huan answered most of them smoothly. Some, stuttering, can also answer some key points. Even Yin, he raised his eyebrows in surprise and asked, "Since you can do this for the sake of the title, why does Lu Shangshu beat you?" Lu Huan was also a little stunned. "I answered when I looked at you, but when I was facing my grandfather and my husband, my mind was a mess, and I couldn't figure it out, let alone answer." The three of them looked at Lu Huan together, and Lu Huan also looked at them with open eyes, and after a while, he showed a sad expression. "Anyway, you are not going to Kongwengan to go to school now, why don't you come and accompany me to study every day?" Bai Shan said slowly, "Don't say this, at least you have to say it differently when you say it, let us read it for you, and you don't care who we are." Lu Huan immediately said, "Will you teach me to read?" Bai Shan was about to respond when the servant of the Lu family led a servant of the Bai family over and believed in him. They only passed the letter in the morning. Bai Shan was afraid that something was wrong with Manbao, so he quickly opened the letter. Yin Or sat on the side and glanced sideways, only to be stunned for a moment, but Lu Huan couldn't help but shout out, "Manbao wants to do shopping with Huang Chuang." Bai Shan emphasized, "It's not Manbao, it's Brother Friday. Aren't they all the same?" But Lu Huan didn't hesitate, nodded, and said, "Okay, it's Brother Friday, they want to buy business." "Well, what's wrong?" Lu Huan scratched his head and said, "It's nothing, you guys are late. My grandfather came back for lunch at noon." Bai Erlang snorted and asked, "Isn't there a meal for officials in the imperial city?" Lu Huan said, "My grandfather came back to escape the disaster. He said, 'Listen to my grandfather, His Majesty was very angry this morning for some reason. He ordered the Ministry of Household to help the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Ministry of the Palace to check the accounts together. Mr. Xin, I heard that even the chief official of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Tong Mai, who has been recovering from illness, climbed down from the hospital bed and went to plead guilty.'" Lu Huan slapped his mouth and said, "My grandfather said that this is a thankless job. If you do it well, His Majesty won't be happy, but will be even more angry, and he will also put the Minister of Internal Affairs, the Provincial Department of the Palace, and the Inner Chamber in charge. That group of people in Ku has all been offended." Bai Shan pondered for a while, and felt that Xiao Yuanzhen was too powerful, and asked, "Can Lu Shangshu hide at home and leave it alone?" "That's not true, he is in a bad mood, he went home to eat delicious food, and lost his temper." Having said that, he picked up the left hand whose imprint was completely invisible and cried, "For example, I ate well, he asked me Book of Changes out of nowhere, how could I answer it? He immediately hit me 3 times with the ruler, and finally I didn't even eat a few bites of food. I'm still hungry." Bai Shan, Bai Erlang and Yin Or looked down at the empty dessert plate in his hand. So sleepy, this time it's really good night, good night. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2383. Lu Huan said, "Isn't the Huangzhuang side always in charge of Lord Luo and the inner servants under him? Brother Friday, there will be no problem doing business with them at this time, right?" Lu Huan didn't know the previous situation, but Bai Erlang knew it. He raised his head and pointed in Bai Shan's direction and said, "There is already a problem. Now Lu Shangshi's trouble is because they solved the problem." Lu Huan turned his head to look at Bai Shan. Bai Shan folded the letter and said, "This has nothing to do with us. As you all know, I have been outside the palace for the past 2 days, and the people I have seen are all of you, not to mention Man Bao, who is locked in the Huangchuang, even outside the palace. It's up to us to deliver the news." "Then this is..." Bai Shan pretended to be good, smiled and said, "Friday brother, this business hasn't started yet, and it doesn't even count the stakeholders, who did it, just think about whose interests it offends." "Just fine." Lu Huan hesitated for a moment and said, "Taiwan Hospital." Bai Shan smiled. He glanced outside, and seeing that it was getting late, he got up and said, "It's time for us to go back. You should study hard." Lu Huan reluctantly said, "You guys stay for dinner. When my grandfather returns, maybe I can find out some information from him." Bai Shan said, "Listen to what you mean, Your Majesty is very angry, so angry, Master Lu may not be able to come back for dinner today. So he should go home and eat, and Manbao has a lot of books and manuscripts, and it will take time to clean up." Bai Shan insisted on saying goodbye. When he got home, he went to report to Lao Zhutu and Jianxi that he was safe. Old Zhutu heard that Manbao was just writing a letter and came back to ask for books and manuscripts, so he sat down in a chair and muttered, "It's too scary, why didn't you mention it when he sent things over in the morning?" Mrs. Lu was also relieved. Bai Shan went to Manbao's study to pack his things, and put the books and manuscripts into a small box. After thinking for a while, he simply went to the big study and filled the box with a stack of blank papers, and then put them together. At the bedside, "Take it to Manbao early tomorrow morning. I wonder if she can find out what happened from Xiao Yuanzheng." Of course Xiao Yuanzheng won't tell her, but Imperial Physician Lu will tell her. After noon the next day, Xiao Yuanzheng brought a large number of imperial physicians and medical assistants to help and study. Manbao and Imperial Physician Lu have taken out all the cowpox, and they are now being sealed in 5 jars. The vaccination test is a major event, and the Xiao Yuan is not planning to let all the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital participate in the whole process, but they also need to learn. Therefore, in several key steps, all the imperial physicians and medical assistants except the imperial physician on duty in the imperial hospital were brought. The first critical step is to prepare the vaccine. Everyone changed their clothes and entered the pharmacy with masks. Thai Dr. Lu and Manbao took out 5 jars and put them in place. A note was posted on it to indicate that it was the pox scab of the cow. Xiao Yuan called Zhou Man on time and said, "No one in the hospital is more familiar with vaccination than Zhou Tai, so let her explain it to everyone." Manbao took a step forward, pointed to 5 jars and said, "The pox scab used for the vaccinia must be mature. Only the mature pox scab will not be so toxic." Manbao opened a jar, took out a spoonful of pox scabs, and said, "These pox scabs are all left after the cow has recovered. What I understand is that because it has defeated smallpox, there is a solution in the pox scabs. There are traces of the drug, so mature pox scabs are not very toxic. Now we're starting to prepare the vaccinia." Because they were all wearing masks, Zhou Man's mask only exposed her eyes, and everyone couldn't see her expression. The few medical assistants with less experience moved their bodies uneasily, not wanting to look at the disgusting acne scab. Medical assistant Lu is also among them. Except for her, Zhou Man's 4 apprentices have either gone to the local medical office or studied in the imperial medical office. Only she can study in the imperial hospital with her now. Because of the experience, Manbao skillfully adjusted the pox scab, wrapped it into a small ball and said, "But this time we don't plant pox in the sinuses, which is less toxic, so we open it directly on the inside of the arm." A small hole, let it touch flesh and blood. Of course, some people are in good health, but they may not be able to grow it just like this, so they need to be placed in the sinuses for secondary pollution, and the smallpox offensive is likely to appear. Xiao Yuanzheng asked, "Have you ever met?" "Not yet," Man Bao said, "my previous experimenters were all veterans and remnants." "Do you think they look like particularly healthy people?" "Therefore, people who are particularly healthy are not good at getting acne. Today's step is to prepare the vaccinia." The prepared vaccine is carefully placed in a clip and placed on a plate. Xiao Yuanzheng only ordered a few people to help. "I was busy until the evening, and only 2/3 of it was completed, and the remaining third was not done. Tomorrow morning, I started to vaccinate, and Imperial Physician Lu stayed here to work overtime with Man Bao and the others." Others changed their clothes and prepared to leave. Man Bao stopped Dr. Lu and said, "Go to my yard and wait. I'll have something for you to take home later." Dr. Lu responded with a salutation and stepped back. When she was gone, Man Bao immediately pulled Imperial Dr. Lu aside and whispered, "Dr. Lu, I heard that His Majesty wants to check the accounts of the Minister of Internal Affairs and the Provincial Department of the Palace." Imperial Physician Lu watched his granddaughter walk away, and then looked back at Zhou Man. "Dr. Zhou is well informed even in Huangchuang." Man Bao waited for him to continue talking, but Imperial Physician Lu said, "Why did you ask me instead of Xiao Yuanzheng?" Man Bao said bluntly, "I dare not." Imperial Physician Lu, "Then you dare to face me." Man Bao said, "Xiao Yuan is doing this right? Who would tell others about the bad things he did?" Imperial Physician Lu, "Why is it such a bad thing to clean up the Lu beetle?" Man Bao thought for a while and said, "I guess, Xiao Yuanzheng came here with a smile for the past 2 days, and he was never late. Obviously, it was not the normal way to write the book, and he never reported it to the censor desk and Dali Temple. His Majesty is so anxious. I think I definitely didn't follow the rules, but I'm doing extraordinary things in extraordinary times." Imperial Physician Lu, "Did Xiao Yuan secretly complain to His Majesty?" Man Bao was very excited when he brought up this topic, but he was a little wary in the excitement. "Will my fifth brother be angered?" Imperial Physician Lu said with a smile, "Don't worry, this matter is not directly related to Xiao Yuan." Man Bao stared, "Does it have anything to do with Xiao Yuanzheng?" "At least that's what it looks like," said Imperial Physician Lu. "Xiao Yuan is looking for the ancient inner servant, and the ancient inner servant happened to have an apprentice in the inner servant province, but it was a pity that he was crushed by Tong's inner servant's godson. It's not certain who will take care of it in the future. This is a struggle for power and profit between their servants, and it has nothing to do with our hospital." He added, "Even Lord Luo was implicated because of AncientChina. If it wasn't for one of his foreign ministers intervening in the internal affairs, Lord Luo would not have followed suit." See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2384. The Empress and many princes, concubines, and concubines are all served by the inner minister and the palace in the palace. There are Yeting Bureau, Gongwei Bureau, 11 Guan Bureau, Nei Serve Bureau and Nei Fu Bureau. Dianzhou Province is Shangxi, Shangyao, Shangyi, Shangxi, Amcheng and Shangnian Bureau. These 2 provinces are all run by internal officials. Internal officials, either internal servants or female officials, are rarely in charge of external ministers. However, there is still a chief administrator in these 2 provinces. The current chief administrator is Lord Luo. He is in charge of the royal family, or the emperor's private property. However, he only took his subordinates to take care of external affairs, such as the operation of shops and mines in Huangzhuang and the emperor. He was extremely busy, and basically the 2 provinces were autonomous. The officials who have served as the chief general are very self-aware and dare not get too involved in the affairs of the 2 provinces. After all, it is the emperor's family affairs. Moreover, the chief steward is not only the emperor's subject, but also the queen's subordinate. Yes, in addition to obeying the emperor, Lord Luo also obeys the queen. The queen also has the power to appoint and dismiss the chief executive of the internal library and handle the affairs of the internal library. So after taking office, Mr. Luo has been conscientiously taking care of these industries of the empress. Occasionally, he goes home with some things. The communication with the two provinces is nothing more than asking for money and materials. He will give money and materials after approval. Of course, he didn't have to do this by himself, and most of the chores were left to AncientChina. The Huangzhuang near the capital was often visited by the emperor and the princes, so Luo Dake handed over the two Huangzhuang in the capital to the Minister of Internal Affairs. Unexpectedly, things that are convenient for you, me, and him ended up like this. Lord Luo is still kneeling in the palace. Gu Zhong came in with a cup of tea, carefully placed it in the emperor's hand, and whispered, "Your Majesty, how about you taste today's tea?" The emperor took a sip and took a sip of tea, and the breath in his chest became much smoother. Then he looked at Lord Luo, who was still kneeling beside him, and snorted, "Get up." Master Luo breathed a sigh of relief, got up from the ground, and stood with his head lowered. The emperor said, "I have always believed in you, and this is why I handed everything over to you." The household department shouted that it was short, and the internal treasury also called that it was short. In the end, it was not me, but you. The emperor was angry when he talked about this, and couldn't help but put the teacup on the table heavily. Lord Luo knelt down again and quickly confessed his guilt. The emperor sneered and said, "Lu Huibei is still ordinary, but he is a good hand in accounting. You go and hand over all the accounts of the inner minister and the palace to him, and the quick calculation of your inner treasury and the household department will work together. I would like to see how my inner treasurer is getting poorer every day." Lord Luo replied respectfully, then got up and slowly retreated. The emperor looked at Gu Zhong and said, "Follow you. If the Minister of Internal Affairs and the Department of the Palace are not obedient, you will beat them." Gu Zhong responded with a smile, bowed and stepped back. Lord Luo stood outside waiting for him. The two of them walked out together, and when they were far away, the breath in Lord Luo's chest came out. Unlike foreign ministers like Wei Ji, Lord Luo often dealt with Gu Zhong, and they knew each other very well, so he glanced at him and said indifferently, "I heard that before your Majesty got angry, Gu was the only servant at his side." Gu Zhong sighed and said, "Master Luo, this matter is indeed my fault, and I didn't expect His Majesty to be so angry." Lord Luo frowned, "What did you really say to your Majesty?" Gu Zhong hurriedly said, "Lord Luo, listen to our family's explanation first. I'm not complaining. Oh, it's too late to say this now. I'm also very panicked in my heart, and I can't feel guilty." Lord Luo also listened to this. Who knows if he is really guilty? It is not uncommon for these servants to die. How much conscience can they have? Now Lord Luo just wants to know why the emperor is so arrogant. Gu Zhong said softly, "It's me who talks too much. Your Majesty is in a good mood this morning. Jizi has arranged things early. If you have nothing to do, your Majesty just wants to go out for a walk. It's just that Lord Luo also knows that because Lord Wei has impeached the Zhen Beast Garden, His Majesty did not dare to go there, but the wind is strong outside, and the cold spring wind blows, which is even tighter than the cold wind in winter, before your Majesty. It's only been 2 days since I got cold, how dare I let him go out?" "Lord Luo, talk about the key points." Gu Zhong said with a guilty face, "In order not to let your Majesty go out to air, I will tell His Majesty some interesting things outside." "Isn't this about Zhou Ziotai?" "Lord Luo, Master Zhou Manzhou." "Exactly." "Lord Luo, what does this have to do with her?" "It doesn't matter," Gu Zhong said with a gloomy expression, "it's just that your Majesty likes Lord Zhou, so I just found some interesting stories about Lord Zhou to tell His Majesty. I remember Lord Zhou mentioned before that she would run the business since she was a child, so she was young. At a young age, the Zhou family and the Bai family set aside a small village for her and Bai County's son-in-law to take care of together, and the village not only grew wheat and rice, but also raised a lot of chickens and ducks. The chickens lay so many eggs that the price of 2 eggs in the county seat can be raised to 1 penny and 1 egg, and later it was 2 cents and 3 eggs. I heard that the eggs in their county are now reduced to 1 penny and 2 eggs. The eggs are gone. Gu Zhong sighed. Who would have known it was so coincidental? At that time, there was a letter asking for funding in the Xiaoyuan of the Taiyuan Hospital on His Majesty's desk. I heard that the Ministry of Household and the Niaku allocated the first money to them. The money is spent very quickly, and there are still many people entering the Huangchuang, and the cost is even greater, so. Gu Zhong raised his head and looked at Lord Luo sympathetically. Your Majesty should have long known why His Majesty was angry. Not only are the prices of the items purchased by Huangchuang from the Imperial Physician's office too high, but the items purchased in the palace are also. Lord Luo moved his mouth and said after a while, of course I know that the hands and feet of the people under my hands are not very clean, but if the water is clear, there will be no fish, and the things in the palace should be the best, and the prices are higher than outside. Master Luo said with a headache, just these chickens, ducks, eggs, meat and vegetables, even if they are twice as high, how much money can they get? Gu Zhong smiled and said, this is not only twice as high, but 3 times as much. I heard that the eggs on the market are only 2 cents apiece, but the eggs bought by the purchasing manager are 6 cents apiece. How many eggs does the entire palace consume every day? There is a lot of money accumulated every day. He said, if they hadn't gone too far, His Majesty wouldn't have been so cruel. Lord Luo frowned. I don't want to interfere with the purchases in the palace. It has always been done by the Minister of Internal Affairs, and the Internal Library only allocates money. Gu Zhong said indifferently, Master Xian, who is under Master Luo, has been doing this all the time. I heard that since Tong Nei became sick, Master Xian has always been in charge of purchasing matters. When Lord Luo heard this, he immediately stopped talking. It is a taboo to interfere in the affairs of the palace. Even the well-known chief of the internal library has to avoid him. Where did AncientChina have the courage to intervene? See you at 9.